Today we are going to be talking about Perek Gimel and Perek Daled, the dealing with crossing of the Yarden by Bnei Yisrael, going in with Yeshua ben Nun to Eretz Yisrael and Yud Nisan. Before we start, I would like to go to Perek Daled. In Perek Daled, thereafter, it says a pasuk that when Bnei Yisrael are crossing the Yarden, if you look at pasuk Yud, va'koyanim nois hei o'orein, oimdim besoich hayarden antoim kol hadovar asher tziva Hashem es Yeshua ledaber elohim, kechol asher tziva Moshe es Yeshua, vayemaharu ha'om vayavoiru. Vayemaharu ha'om vayavoiru. What is this vayemaharu ha'om vayavoiru? It's talking about that across the Yarden, they are going to do it expedited. So the Mitzudas and the Radak. What's Vayemaharu? Ba'avur kvoid ha'orin she'omad ad oivrom, since the orin stood there till they all passed, so the expedited doesn't pass, so the orin should be waiting for them when they cross the Yarden. So you do it Vayemaharu in the loshin of Zrizus and Mehirs. The Goyen in Aderes Eliyahu, in the Pish, whoever has over here a Goyen, Zog the Goyen, what is Vayemaharu or Vayavoiru? Says the Goyen, Shemiaru lovoi le'eretz Yisrael, mipnei sheshow arboim shono v'loibou le'eretz Yisrael, l'kach miaru. They expedited. Since there were 40 years in the Midbar, they wanted to get into Eretz Yisrael as fast as possible. And the question is obvious. The Reichav, the width of the Yarden, from the northern point in Yam Kinneret till the southern point, Yam Melech, there's a machlekes in the Gemara, Midrashim, 3 Manda Omrim. One guy said 35 amos, one guy says 50 amos. The widest shita is Shitas of Nehemiah, v'roich boi shel hayarden shivim amo. In the widest space, the Yarden did not go, it wasn't straight, it was going, some places it was wider and some places it was narrower. In the widest place, the Yarden was 70 amos. As I state, according to this Mandoma in the Tosefta, in the Sugya Sagamora, in Masechah Seiter. How much is the amo? Amo, we have a machlekes amo. Let's take the widest shiur of amo according to the Chazanish, and amo is 60 centimeter. Okay, so if I take 70 amos and I take 60 centimeters, the width of the Yarden in the widest place was 42 meter, a bit less than 50 yards. Now, I want to make the cheshbon. The Gemara state as mahalach of Odom Beinani is 18 minutes. A person walks, a mahalach of a person to walk a meal is 18 minutes. How much is a meal? A meal is 1,609 meters. Comes out that walking 42 meters is be'erech 1/38 of a shiur meal. So Lama Zogen, if I would like to make a suggested retail padded figure, to cross the Yarden takes approximately 30 seconds. If I take this cheshbon, 30 seconds. Lama Zogen that a big group of 2.4 million people are coming right now to come into Eretz Yisrael. There's Viber, there's Kinder. Doesn't take a half a minute, it takes a minute, it takes 2 minutes. 4 times as long to cross this 50 yards of the Yarden. So, Dosi the Posuk Vayemaharu Om Vayavoiru, I understand, according to the Radak, I understand. There's an Inyan not to be mizalzel and cover the Torah, and the Torah should not be waiting for you, therefore do it as fast as possible. But according to the Goyen, since there was shiur boim shana b'midbar, they were so long in the midbar boim shana, therefore when the first opportunity they have, they're running into Eretz Yisrael. Furthermore, if you look in Shir HaShirim, and the pasuk, Moshcheni acharecho norutzo heviani amelech hadorov nogilo venis mechoboch nazkiro doidecho miyain meishorim ohevucho. So the Goyen in Shir HaShirim has a whole pshat. But I'd like to focus on this 3 words, Moshcheni acharecha norutzo. We pulled you out of the Goyen from Mitzrayim, norutzo to Eretz Yisrael. So the Goyen, v'hainu diksiv, v'yamarom v'yavir. The Goyen sends us reference to the pasuk by us in Yehoshua, that Moshcheni acharecha Kadosh Baruch Hu, shir hashirim mamish, kodesh kadoshim. Moshcheni acharecha norutzo, we ran to Eretz Yisrael. So the Goyen, what is the running? What do we find going to Eretz Yisrael is running? Norutzo. So it comes out that this norutzo is in a certain expression of a kesher, of a hava, tzvishin the Kodesh Baruch Hu. The Goyen says that the epitome of shir hashirim is in the Ani HaMelech HaDorov. And this Yimaru, this norutzo, this running, is this Vayimaru. Vos tutzach do, vos shtei do. I'd like to offer an explanation which may be a pshat in our Goyen. If we look in the story of the Meraglim in the Torah, Parashat Shlach, steht in the pasuk Vayishlach oisom Moshe mimidbar poran al pi Hashem, kulam anoshim roishei bnei Yisrael emo. Sagt Rashi, what does it mean? Kulam anoshim, alle seine Menschen. So Rashi, kol anoshim shebemikre loshen chashivus, ve'oiso shah kseirim oyu. Every Loshen Ish means Achoshev Mensch. And at that time, the Meraglim, they made a Chet HaMeraglim, B'oisa Sho Ksherim Hoyu. What does it mean, B'oisa Sho Ksherim Hoyu? The Oynesh of the Meraglim, steht in Torah, Beferish, Ubneichem Yu Roim Bamidbor Arboim Shono, V'nosus Nuseichem Atoim Pigreichem Bamidbor, B'mispar Ayomim Ashetartem Esoretz, Arboim Yoim Lashono, Yoim Lashono, Tisu, Esavoinisechem Arboim Shono, V'yedatem Es Nuosi. It says that Keneged the Arboim Yoim, that the Meraglim went to Losur Esoretz, they have to say a Oynesh of 40 days. Yoim Lashono, Yoim Lashono. The Ramban speaks about the story of the Chet HaMeraglim happened a year and 3 months. The Gemara state that they came out of the Meraglim left of Chavtes Nisan, Chavtes Sivan of Oisa Shono of the 2nd year. So it comes out B'Yisoidoi, the Chet HaMeraglim was a year and approximately 3 months after they came out of Mitzrayim. So the Ramban was a chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did that was mechashev the zman that they already were in the Midbar as part of the Oynesh of Arboim Shono. Bal Kaponim, if we make the cheshbon of Yoim Lashono, Zog the Goyen, a moirdike cheshbon. And the Goyen, be'emes is klal so we're in the Midbar, Arboim Shono. But it's not really true, because Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim on Leil Tesvov Nisan, Beis Alof in Tov Mem Ches, we know that, 24:48, and they came in to Eretz Yisrael, Shtei Doim Psukim, Ba'asiri L'chodesh Nisan, which is 4 days less. So where do we find this reduction of 4 days? Number one. Number two, for the Goyen, the emes is that to go from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael, steht in the Torah, if there wouldn't have been an Oynesh, it would have taken a duration. A regular walker who walks from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael with bahalacha of Odom Beinani, his Eser Mil B'Yoim, comes out 11 days. From the point they left to the point they got to, is a mahalach of 110 mil. That floor makes the whole cheshbon. But upon him, these 11 days that is the mahalach of Odom Beinani, anyhow to go from Chutz La'aretz, from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. So that's not part of the Oynesh. So it comes out that there is the Oynesh of Arboim Shono minus 15 days. The 4 days that's missing for the anniversary, plus the 11 days that it's the duration of a normal walk for Odom Beinani. Zog the Goyen, Amoyer de Kazach. Be'oiso Sho Ksheir Moyu doesn't mean Be'oiso Sho in that period of time, in that era. It's not a general Hagdorah of that time that they were Ksherim. But the Cheshbon was Mamish Oizgi Cheshbon. Because if we're going to say Yoim Lashona, a day is 24 hours. A year is 12 months. So it comes out that every single 2 hours is Shokol Keneged the Chodesh. So the Goyen, Vibal be'oisa shor, in the first hour, literal hour, Ashah from Zega, there were ksherim, so comes out, Keneged that shor, they don't need to get an einish. How do you deduct? If you deduct 1 hour from a 24-hour and the cheshbon of Yom Lashona comes out that a half a month is missing. Because if 1 hour, which is a half of 12th, is Oyuk Sheirim, you have to knock off the Goyen. That's the 15 days that were shaven off from the Einish. Because the Einish of the Meraglim was Midak and the Gemida Yom Lashona. And in as much, so the Goyen, the Be'oisa Shok Sheim Oyu, you have to knock off the 15 days. This is the 4 days of the missing 4 days and the 11 days that would have taken naturally to be over the Yarden. If you do so we understand very well that every show, every moment, Klal Yisrael goes in the Midbar, so this is not a Spatzir Shabbos noch in Shont. The whole Nidudeichem Bamidbar, Aboim Shon Okot Bedor, was a take Mida Keneged Mida. For every single second they zindikt, they got the Einish of Chet HaMeraglim. In the moment they got to the Nahar Yarden, and in the moment they got to the Nahar Yarden, that they could cross the Yarden schnell, in a half a minute, instead of taking a spatzir of 2 minutes, klappe these minute or two extra, walking normal or going fast, klappe them there was no chet. So since HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yodei Yisaisav is Mechashev, Mamish, every iota of the time they was indict, right now, when they finish being meratz the Einish, they're running. They're going into Eretz Yisrael. Moshchein acharecho, ze leifen in Eretz Yisrael, mizdabek zayin lishchino norutzo. Vayimaru om vayavoru. Here we are experiencing this hishteikekus to kesher, the real kesher between Klal Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu, by going into Eretz Yisrael, and it's telling us, a whole pasuk. Vayimaru vayavoru, said the Goyen, Moshcheini acharecho, norutzo eviani amelech hadorov. When Kadosh Baruch Hu takes Klal Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, lefi shesho arboim shona bamidbor, and they didn't come to Eretz Yisrael, so they're going, now it's the time to come in the first possible moment, and if you could cross the Yarden a minute or 2 minutes earlier, do so. So that's all for the Pshat. I'd like to go weiter. The MSCs, when they're coming to cross the Yarden, so we look at the Psukim by us in Perek Gimel. There's a Meir de Kazach. If you look at the Psukim, look at Pasuk in Perek Gimel in Pasuk Tesvav. Ukevoi noise oren ad Yarden v'ragloi akohanim noise oroin nitbelu b'ktzei hamoim v'ayarden mola al gdoisov kol yemei kotzer. The Yarden, this is yemei kotzer. We're talking about the Zman of Asora ben Nisan starts the Yemei HaKotzer, and the Yarden Uzmola Agdes is the end of the winter. The end of the winter is the time where the Nachal, all the Necholim, all the rivers are full, overflowing with water. Shteit HaMedrash, Hayom Rov Vayonos, Hayarden Yisel Lo'ocher. And the pasuk that we say in Tehillim, B'tzeis Yisrael and Mitzrayim, Hayom Rov Vayonos, Shteit in Medrash, Ma Ro Hayom Venos. So once a sefer from the Heinti Kesad Meir Rebbe, 150 pshatim in this Medrash Pliya. But I would like to suggest a story that happened in Neder B'Yehuda when there's a kleine Ingel. Steht im Medrash, Hayom Ro Vayonos, Ma Ro Hayom Venas, Ro Mechilta de Rabbi Shmuel. Everybody said, what is Mechilta de Rabbi Shmuel? Who says Mechilta de Rabbi Shmuel? So this question, the Neder B'Yehuda's father asked him when he was a 6-year-old child, what is the Pshat in the Medrash? Zogt the Neder B'Yehuda, why does it say, Hayom Ro Vayonos Ayarden Yisoiv L'ocher? Yisoiv means he shall be making a U-turn L'ocher. You should say, this Mizmor, David HaMelech says, way after the story of Klal Yisrael going to Eretz Yisrael. So you should say, Hayarden Nosoiv L'ocher, Nosov or Nosoiv L'ocher, which means it already happened. Hayarden Yisoiv is B'Loshen Nosid. Why does it say B'Loshen Nosid? So, Zogt the Neder B'Yehuda, the kleine Neder B'Yehuda, Reb Chatzkel Land Chatzkale, od gezogt, the Yam saw the future. There will come a day, 40 years later, that the Yarden will be Yisov La'ocher, the Yam Ro. At the time the Yam Ro, he saw already the fortune telling, the 40 years down the road, when the Yarden will be Nosav La'acher. And he made a Kavachemer. If B'fnei Yehoshua was a Talmud of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Yam is Nikra, the Yarden is Nosav La'acher, Kavachemer is B'fnei Rabbi, B'fnei Moshe Rabbeinu, that I have to split myself and be Boikeya. Who is the one who says the Kavachemer? We know Rabbi Shmuel Eimer, B'shlosh Midas Atera Niknes Bohem, Atera Nidreshes Bohem. One of them is Kavachemer. So Ma Ro Hayom, that's what Bnei Yehuda said, Beloshon Tzachus, Pshat Nemedesh, I'm not getting involved, that the Yam saw through a Kavachemer that Moshe is greater than Yeshua, so the Neis has to definitely happen to Moshe, to Yehoshua. If it happened to Yeshua, it definitely has to happen to Moshe through a Midas Kavachemer. Let me see, if we look, there's a fundamental difference between the Kriyas Yamsuf b'mei Moshe to what happened b'mei Yeshua. The Kriyas Yamsuf, steht doch that Kadosh Baruch Hu came to the Yam, Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Yam, and he told him, you should be Beikeya, steht in the Medrash, Tchila Sator Maksiv, Vayomer L'kim Yikovu Hamayim, Ani she'yitni imoi, yitneisi imoi, Akach yitneisi mitchil shani koyer. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I made a t'nai with the Yam ani koyer. Shenema vayoshav hayam lifnei zboka leisonoi, al tiki leisonoi litnoi arisha she'yisneisi imoi. Miyad shoma Moshe l'Kadosh Baruch Hu v'olach l'koyer sayam. V'kiven she'olach l'koyer sayam lo yikibel olov l'ikor. He didn't want. Omar la'ayom miponecha ani nikra ani godlo mimcha. Shani nivreisi b'shlishi ve'ata nivreisa b'shishi. Kiven sheshoma Moshe kach. Holach ve'omar l'Kadosh Baruch Hu hein hayam loitzel l'ikor. The Yom doesn't want to split. Ma'osa HaKadosh Baruch Hu nosan yemina al yemina shel Moshe shenema moilich limin Moshe HaPosek in Yeshaya miyad ro l'Kadosh Baruch Hu ve'borach shenema hayom ro vayonos ma ro el shero l'Kadosh Baruch Hu shenosan yad yamin al Moshe ve'yochel ha'akev. So Moshe Rabbeinu is having a hard time, and he's having a dialogue with the Yam, and the Yam tells him, "Ich bin chashev from the I was never before you." And Moshe Rabbeinu is mekabel is to go back to Kadosh Baruch Hu and get a support. Kadosh Baruch Hu's right hand is on Moshe Rabbeinu's right hand, and the Yam shreksach and his nikra. Furthermore, afterwards, even after Kadosh Baruch Hu came, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Who is from the Shvatim Koifetz Tchila?" Until Nachshon ben Aminodov, the Nasi l'Shevet Yehuda went, and he giu mayim ad nefesh, pashet mamesh, up to his nose, he was about to drown. Then the Mesiras Nefesh, the yain split. Here, when we look at the Pesukim over here, it says Befeirish, V'hoyo kenoyach, look at the Posuk Yud Gimel, Kapo Yisrael HaKoyanim, Ne'isoron Hashem, Adoin Kol Ha'oretz, V'mei HaYarden, Mei HaYarden Koreisu, Hamayim HaYodim Milmal, V'yamdu B'nei Echod. As soon as Noach Kapo Yisrael HaKoyanim, you don't need much more. And he's talking about the water went, steht in Chazal and Seite, b'shetzev ketzev. Boiling was rushing, the water was gegangen akoch from the Wasser. And then, in order for the Yarden to split, all you need is the Kohanim to put their cracks touching the Yarden, and the Yarden splits himself. And there was a molal g'deis of kol yemei kotzir, v'yamdu hamayim hayodim milomal l'komu nerechot. Right? I once heard from Abramsky, somebody told me that he told over this vort to the Chazon Ish. I don't have a support to that, but I heard it from the Ein from Anshe Beisoi. What is the pshat that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Yam, is not nivka right away, and there's a ganze masu matna. He needs a support. He needs physical support of Yad Yamina. And by Yeshua was Talmido, Pnei Moshe Kepnei Chama, Pnei Yeshua Kepnei Levano. Is right away, as soon as they touch, the Yarden splits. What's the pshat? So Abramsky said, there's a major fundamental nafkamine between the Yam and the Yarden. The Yam was koydem Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, the Teva was not meshubet to Torah. There was no Torah in the Welt. So anything was needed, it needed an external support. Since there's no Torah after the Welt, So Moshe Rabbeinu kum, there's a dialogue, there's a masulman to negotiate. I'm before you, before me, I need Yeminai. And on Mesiras Nefesh, from Yigiu Maimad Nefesh, there is no Kriyas Yamsuf. After Matan Torah, the Teva is Meshubah to Torah and Lemdeya. Therefore, when Klal Yisrael comes and Aroim Bris Hashem, Hoylech Lefnei HaMachane, Mishtane, Kol Yoim, like we said last week. Aroim Bris Hashem, the Torah gate for us, is the Teva, Kodesh Baruch Hu wants Klal Yisrael to cross the Yarden, is the Teva, is Meshubah to the Torah. This is an alter vote from Chaim HaKodesh. Chaim HaKodesh has a big arichas about this inyan of Teva Meshubed to the Bria. Says the Gemara says in Chulin, the story of Pinchas ben Yair was the father-in-law of Rab Shimon ben Yochai, was going once to tzedakah of Pidyon Shvuim. He came to a nor, it's called Nor Ginoi, and he said to him, Amoid, I need to go through the yard, through the Ginoi, please split. So the Yam told the Yarden, the Nar Ginoi tells him, why should I split? He said, because I'm going for mitzvahs Pidyon Shvuim. He says, I have a tzivui, Yoim v'layla lo yishbaisu, I have to have, the Nachal has to go the whole time without non-stop. Yoim v'layla lo yishbaisu. And I have my job as a vaday mitzvah, because that's how Kadosh Baruch Hu constructed the world. You go for Pidyon Shvuim, you don't know if you're matzliach. Say, Savach mitzvah de vaday. You did not want to split. And it says, Omar Pinchas ben Yair, Ima eina tonika b'fonai, ani miyab shecho. He told him, I'm going to make you dry. Completely dry. The Nachal heard it, and the Har Ginoi heard it, split. More says there was a Yid cutting some wheat for matzahs. He was left behind. He heard, he came to Pinchas ben Yair, he whistled, he screamed from across the Nahar, I have to go through, you just made it dry, why don't you let me through? Pinchas ben Yair goes again in the Nahar Ginoi, and he lets him through. The third story came out, Yishmaeli, he said, what's only for Yid, not for Goyim, and again and again and again. What is the pshat that Moshe Rabbeinu makes Kriyas Yamsuf, is betupim ben Mochelis, Azel b'shayla. And Pinchas ben Yair comes in, and he walks pokus, he just tells the Nor, if you don't split up, I'll dry you up. Immediately, he split. Zog the Chaim HaKodesh, Moshe Rabbeinu came to split Yamsuf was before Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, the Teva was not Meshubah to the Torah. The La'acha Matan Torah, Pinchas ben Yair comes in, so everything, the whole Teva, the whole nature is being controlled by Torah. So if Torah needs you because there's a mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuim, it's a safek. Ain't safek mitzvah Teva. You're right. There is no word. Or Pinchas ben Yair says split, there's something which is split open. The truth of the matter is that this Erechaim is Dvorim Yeduim. There's a pasuk in Tehillim, Ekro le'leikim elyoin, lakel goymer olai. So the Yerushalmi, Shtek Yerushalmi, Amoyedik Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says, we know that the Ktana, which was Nival, so Pochas Mishal Ishanim is Psulei Chayzrim, and she's not called Be'ulo. Like Fashidna Dinim, if she's called Be'ulo or not. But La'achar Shal Ishanim, she's called Be'ulo because ain't Psulei Chayzrim. So the Yerushalmi, what happened if Bezdin was Me'aber the Chaydish? Bezdin was Me'aber the Chaydish, so it comes out you really became a G'dayla, but now they're Me'aber the Chaydish because Eidim didn't come and made on Kiddush HaChodesh. So we have an extra day. Zog the Yerushalmi, Psulei HaChayzrim, this is Besulim of a Ktan. Even though she became 3 years old, and the Alochi is 3 years old, and Psulei HaChayzrim, the Besulim will be Chayzrim because Chachomim are now Me'aber the Chaydish, so she's 1 day less than 3 months, than 3 years. And therefore, the Alochi is Besulei HaChayzrim. This is the Gemara, the Shach, has a psak on Vestas HaChodesh. You know, we have Vestas. One of the Vestas is Vestas HaChodesh. Zog the Shach, and I'm quoting, Shekol ma shebeizin shel mata oisim, beizin shel mailo maskimi oisim. Therefore, if they're me'aber the Chodesh, then the whole thing changes according to Torah. Bottom line, La'achar Matan Torah, we have a concept of the Teva is Meshubed to Torah. Torah is in the front and it's the back. Teva is thereafter. And there's many the Gemara, Subchav Aloshna Be'emes Nefesh HaChaim, says Amoyer the Kazach that Eichet the Zelbe, if I want to quote, L'zei Sodom Mekabel Atzmol Torah Aktesh Lishmol Amita Unalo Me'al Kol Inyon Ha'olam Hazeh Umushgach Mi'ito Yisborach Hashgoch HaPortis L'mayla Me'uras Koyres Ativ Ve'amozel Kulom Ki Mishu Dobek Ba'Kodesh Baruch Hu Mamish U'miskadesh B'Kedush Al Yenesh Al Akdesho שאין למעלה ממנו. לאין הרויך בכל העולמס, ויהיה הניסנס הכיס והקים לעולם ולכל החייכס הטבעים, הרי האודום העסק בו מחיה ומקיים מסכולם ולמעלה מכולם. ואיך אפשר שתהיה הנוגוסה מייצא יסבורך על די הכוחס הטבעים. Bottom line, if we do Torah the way Torah is supposed to be, the Teva changes. If we do Torah the way Torah is supposed to be, Bezis me'aber chodesh, the Besulei HaChayzim, the Teva is Mishtanach, some Sefer is a whole arichas about Tu B'Shvat. I don't want to get involved and get off the topic. Echad Ezel B'Zach. Roshana Muberes, even though there's a time, physically, theoretically, Tu B'Shvat should be a month later, but since now the Shana Muberes, everything changes according to the din of the Torah. The Torah is dictating and the Teva is Meshubah to the Torah. Here we're holding after Matan Torah, Zohar Abramsky. After Matan Torah, all you need is the cracks of the Kohanim to touch the Yarden. They touch the Yarden, splits. Pichas ben Yoyer, Ginoy, splits. Moshe Rabbeinu comes before there's a Torah. I mean, they were kind of Torah before called Torah. Medin Kim called Torah, actually nitno. Moshe Rabbeinu comes afterward, beforehand. He's having a hard time. He has to negotiate. You need the Tnai Sheis Nakadosh Baruch Hu. The Yam should be Nikra Leison Litno Arishain. And without the Mesiras Nefesh, without Torah, the only way Shaykh to overrule, to overpower nature is only by Kofatz at Savora B'Mayim. The Omar Riboyne Shel Olam Higiu Mayim Ad Nefesh. I'd like to start Perek Dalet today. I'd like to go weiter and read a few psukim. Everybody should please look Perek Dalet Psukim Aleph Ates. ויאמר השם לישוע, קחו לכם מנעם 12 אנשים, איש אחד משבט, וצבו אויסם לאמר, שאו לכם מזה מתוך הירדן, ממצב רגלה הכהנים, וכן 12 עוונים, ועברתם אויסם עמכם, והנחתם אויסם במול אשר תלינו בו. הקדוש ברוך הוא tells Yeshua, take 12 people, each from each shevet, and take mimatzav ragel koyanim from the parking lot, from where the koyanim are standing, 12 avonim, take them with you to the moloin, to the hotel asher tolinu bo yalaylo. Vayikro Yoshua el 12 ish, asher heichen mibnei Yisrael ish echod yishevet, vayomer lohem Yeshua ivru lifnei aroin Hashem elokechem otoch hayarden, והרימו לכם איש אבן על שכמו למשפט ישראל, למען תהיה זויס אויס בקיר בכם. כי שם לבניכם מוכן להם מה עוונים האלה, לכם ואמרתם להם אשר נכנסו ממי הירדן, מפני הרואים בריס השם ברוב ובירדן נכדו מהירדן, והעוונים האלה לזכור לבני ישראל עד אוהל, ויעשו כבני ישראל כאשר ציווה ישוע, וייסו 12 עוונים מתוך הירדן, כאשר דיבר השם לישוע למשפט, ויעברם אימר למלון ויניחום שם, ו12 עוונים איקים ישוע בסויך הירדן, תחת מצב רגל הכהן ואיש שם עד היום הזה. The truth of the matter is, where the Kodesh Baruch Hu tells them, קחו לכם מנעם, ויאמר השם לישוע, זוכת רש"י, 12 אנושים הם שנזכורים למעלו ליוס נכויים. Which means like this. In Perek Gimel, where we just finished, it says, ואתו, Yeshua tells כלל ישראל, קחו לכם 12 איש משבטי ישראל, איש אחד לשבט. It doesn't say what's the job. It just says, designate 12 people. אז זה זוכת ישוע in Perek Gimel. זוכת רש"י, in Perek Gimel. הכינו אויסום ליוס נכונים, שעצה ואויסום כשתעברו את הירדן. Be prepared for your mission, for your assignment, once you're going to cross the Yarden. And therefore, Rashi says that this Shnei Masor, that Yeshua was Meichin, Koidem, that's what Rashi says, Shnei Masor, Heim Shenizkonu Lamal Yisnechim. In other words, whatever Yeshua instructed to prepare 12 people, these are the 12 people, and this is their assignment. Frag the Radak, I don't understand. In Perek Gimel, Yeshua is Metzav. It doesn't say Hashem tells Yeshua. Yeshua is Metzav Midai to take 12 people, which was prior to the tzivui of Hashem to Yeshua, which it says in Perek Dalet. Perek Dalet says, Vayomer Hashem Yeshua. That's number one. Second of all, Frag the Radak, in Perek Gimel, according to most Rishonim, it happens either in Tes Nisan, the day prior to crossing the Yarden, or maybe the other Rishonim that learn it happens Yud Nisan early in the morning. Okay? Al Kaponim, according to everyone, this Sivui of Yeshua to designate the 12 people was way before they were crossing the Yarden. Okay? So what is the Kodesh Baruch Hu telling Yeshua right now, take 12 people, if Yeshua already was preparing the people prior to crossing the Yarden? In order to understand the Pesukim, I want to have this Pesukim here a bit ambiguous. In order to have over here a Klorkite, I would like to learn with your shtikale suge in Soite and come epis mit a Klokat in the hand. The Gemara in Soite of Lamed says as follows: Nimtzes ato oimer shloisha mina advonim hoyu. There are three kinds of stone. Echot sheiki Moshe be'eretz Moav shenema be'eretz be'ever Yarden be'eretz Moav. First stones was Moshe's time. It's history. It's the past. Be'ever Yarden be'eretz Moav, Moshe was making 12 stones. Ve'echot sheiki Yeshua b'sercha Yarden shenemar. This pasuk we're reading right now, v'shtem avonim making Yeshua b'sercha Yarden. ואיכות שהקים בגילגול, שנאמר ו12 האדבונים אשר לקחו, when the Kodesh Baruch Hu told them, they parked it in Gilgal. So the Gemara says, the first Gemara in Seita says, there are three different kinds, 36 stones. 12 stone Moshe is doing in Ever Yarden HaMizrochi in Eretz Moav. 12 Yeshua parks in the Yarden, like it says over here in the Pasuk. An additional 12 he takes with him to the Gilgal. The Gemara later, in Daf Lamed Vov, the Gemara says like this: the day that they crossed the Yarden, our Grizim and our Evel, according to Poshta Pshat, the Gemara we talk about the Grizim and Evel, which are in Shem, which is Be'erech, approximately 60 miles northwest of Yericho, where they're coming in. Ve'en kol beri yochel amud b'fneihem. They carried the avonim with them 60 miles. From this avonim they built a mizbeach. V'sadu b'seed, and they painted with some kalach, with seed. V'kosu aleim es kol divrei HaTorah b'shivim loshen shenema ba'er eitev. They wrote on top of the stone the Torah. We learned it already before. They Yisrael write the Torah in Agrizim and Arevel, ve'elu oilos v'shlomim. On top of these stones, which they brought over 60 miles, they built it, and they wrote the Torah. They built ve'ochlu v'shosei oilos v'shlomim. We spoke about it once. L'chura, it's shutechutz. It's man Yisrael Abamas. Gilgal is not around yet. They're still holding by the Mishkan from the Midbar. Not the topic today. Ve'ochlu v'shosu v'simchu uborchu ubirchu v'kilalu. They made the brachos and clothes. V'kiplu esavonim, they're wrapped up, they're taking it apart after they built it, and after they write the whole Torah, and after the makrim, and after they say the brachos are closed, they wrap up the avonim. Ubo v'lonu bagilgol shenema v'avarte v'etem yimochem v'inachtem oisem b'mol. Come to choice to the Gemara that the zel be'avonim, the very same avonim that they took from the Yarden, were used as a mizbeach in our Grizim and our Vevel, and thereafter they folded them, they brought it back from Hagrizim and Avevel back to Gilgal, which was east, many miles away east from where they were. Rashi says on the pasuk, Se'u lochem mizeh mitoch hayarden, perek dalet pasuk gimel, vosei se'u mitoch hayarden mimatzav v'shtevesre avonim, zokt Rashi v'avatem oisam kemitzvas Moshe livnes le'mizbeach bar Evel v'liksev divrei ha'Torah Aleim uboy bayoim bo el arevel bona mizbech velois v'shosu v'kiplu bon velois magilgo. Rashi says it's the same of the mitzvah of Moshe to build the mizbech in our Evel. So this avonim se'u lochem in Yarden 12 avonim in order to park him in our Grizim and Avel to write the Torah and to bring it back to the Gilgal. The problem is, if I look at Parshas Kisovei, and I'm reading the Pesuk of Eitzav Moshe v'zik Yisrael Lomu Shomoy Oskol HaMitzvah Shel Nech Mitzav V'Eschim V'hoyo Bayoyim Asher Tavu Esayarden La'oretz Asher V'kechu Ne'islecho V'akemoisel Lecho Avonim Gdoiles V'sadeto Isom Basid V'kosafta Olam Yisrael Divrei HaTorah Azus Be'ovecho Leman Asher Tover La'oretz Asher Hashem Elokecho Ne'islecho Eretz Zor Eschol Lidvosh Kasher Diber Elokea V'Yisecho Loch V'hoyo Be'overchem Esayarden Tokimu Es Avonim O'ela Asher Anoichi Mitzav V'Eschim Ba'ar Grizim Ba'ar Evel V'sadeto Isom Basid. Zokt Rashi, look at Loshen Rashi, V'akemoisel lecho bayarden, v'achar kach toitzi mishom acheres, v'akemoisel lecho bayarden, v'achar kach toitzi mishom, take other stone, v'tivne mehem mizbeach bar Evel. Nimtze isato oimer, this is Rashi Parshas Kisovei. Shesholosh min avonim oyu, 12 bayarden. Rashi is not talking about the avonim in the time of Moshe, that the Gemara said before. Rashi says, in the Yarden, it's all the three different kind of avonim. Shneimeseh bayarden, he parked in the Yarden, ukenegdon bagilgol, ukenegdon behar evel. So Rashi says that Yeshua had three different stones. The avonim in the Yarden, which were stayed there, the new 12 avonim which stayed in our evel, and another 12 avonim they took from the Yarden, and they put them into the Gilgal. And this is not like Rashi says, the whole sugya, the Kmi sugya says that they took the avonim from Hagrizim Avev, the Mekapelim, they brought him the same avonim to the Gilgal. Okay, so Mashor asks the Kasha, and he says he doesn't understand where Rashi takes it from. There were three different kind of avonim by Yeshua. The Gemara Shteitach Beferish, there were the same avonim which were in Hagrizim and Avev came back to the Gilgal. Zok the Mizrahi, he says Rashi doesn't mean there are three kind of avonim. There are only 12 in the Yarden. Rashi just means there were 3 times they were making the avonim. They erected the avonim 3 times. Once to park it into the Yarden. Once they took to the Hagrizim and Avev ve'hakemoiso. And the 3rd time, now they took new 12 avonim to park it in the Gilgal, but the Zelba avonim, in order for all the Gemoras to shtim, they took it from the Gilgal from Hagrizim and Avev back to Gilgal. If I look further in the Gemara says, Oidem Bayarden, okay. This is Bayarden, we're going to speak about this Oidem Bayarden. But one of the things that it says in the Gemara, the Oidem Bayarden, Omar Lohem Yeshua Rimu Lochem Ish Even Achas Al Shichma Lemispar Shiftei Yisrael. Leman Tia Zois Ois Bekir Bechem Ki Shalom Bnechem Mochel Lema Avonim Oile Simon Lebonim She'ovru Oves Esayarden. Steht in more clear. Pick up the 12 stones, and this should be b'simin. Oy bayarden, Omar le Yeshua sulachem mizeh mitoch hayarden 12 avot avartem oy nachtem b'molen yochol b'molen ash b'chol molen talmudim asher talmudim b'laylo. Zog the Maharsha that of course they took only one savonim to be maimed in the Gilgal. What the Gemara says oydem bayarden, it means the same avonim, but it's not 2 different kind of avonim. Rashi says over there in the Gemara in Saita, hey ma'avonim sheikimu tachas matzav ragla koyanim lezikoron liyasiman le'ovei she'ovru oves esayarden. This is going to be a siman. Says Rashi further, heim sheikimu be'evel ubona mizbeach v'kipu v'kovim begilgal. Rashi says like this. If you look at the psukim, be'emes sucht Rashi that ve'irimu lochem l'mishpa shiftei Yisrael, that is the avonim which they stayed in the Yarden in Zikoron. They made a monument. Those avonim, they made the monument. And this monument is Zikoron in Israel. Somebody's going to come in 100, 200, 300 years and say, what is this avonim? Say, you know what? This is the Zeicher Ma'aboras HaYarden Yeshua cross with Klal Yisrael as a major nace. And then, Vetzavu Oisa, this is Yeshua. Vetzavu Oisa, Chadish Baruch Hu tells Yeshua, Se'ulachem in HaYarden, Ochin Shtemes Avonim, that's a different avonim. They took 12 avonim from the Yarden, they took it to the Gilgal. So it comes out that the emissary took out 24 stones out of, they dug. By the way, the stones, each stone was Arbaim Se'o, huge stones. They dug out of the Yarden 24 avonim. 12 they picked up, and those 12 are the 12 that Yeshua was mitzuvah the day before. He says, I'm going to tell you what to do. If you read the Psukim now, it's Kemin Chaymer. 12 avonim Yeshua was mitzvah to pick up from the Yarden Park and make a monument in order for generations to come to perpetuate the nest. The other 12, avonim achim, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vayomer Hashem el Yeshua, Se'u lochem, 12 ve'avartim, v'nachtem al b'mamon, those are the people who are taking the avonim from the Yarden, different avonim, to take it to Gilgal, to take it first to the Hagrizim Eval, and afterwards take it to Gilgal. Comes out that Perek Dalet, both Sivuim are Me'urav Zebezeh. Let's read the past Perek again, just in 1 minute to wrap it up. Vayir kasher tam, vayomer Hashem Yeshua, kach lecho, shminom 12 anoshim, ish echod, v'tzav v'se'u mimatzav, ve'imnachtem oisem amon. That's the tziva of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayikri Yeshua el 12 ish asher reichen ibnei Yisrael, ish echod mishevet. That goes back on the 12 anoshim that Yeshua prepared yesterday, either Tes or Yud in the morning. ויאמר להם לישוע, הרימו לכם איש משפט שבטי ישראל, למען יהיה איז בקיר בכם כי איש הלכוכם מוכר מה העוונים האלה. ואמרתם, אשר נכנסו מהם מהירדן. Comes out that it's mixed. It's an optical illusion, but if you read the Pesukim right now, it's beautiful. Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Yeshua, take from Matzav Lagol Kayanim in order to go over to cross, to get Agrizim HaEvil, to write the whole Torah, to make with the Korbanos, take it back and park it in Gilgal forever. Yeshua designated the day before the Anoshim in order to pick up 12 stones and to perpetuate, to build, to construct them in order to have a zikaron for Bnei Yisrael for future generations to come